I've tried recording this video multiple times. It's not going too well, so I just want to do a quick introduction before I start reading something that I've written. I always do better when I write than when I just talk, as you'll probably see in this quick intro, but there's been a number of stories this week in the news about huge injustices towards people of colour. People who have white skin, no matter what country you're in, have a responsibility to not deal with this shit anymore. I struggle on how to respond to stories like the ones we've had in the news this week because they're largely out of America, and not being American and not being able to directly contact the bodies and the institutions who are causing such damage to American people. I feel helpless quite often and I don't know how to respond to them. I'm ashamed that it's taken so much for me to really open my eyes to the situation in New Zealand at home, the situations in other places where I've lived, but I think all of us have to keep our eyes open and we have to call out this racist shit that's just poison. It's just awful. On that, I've been keeping my eyes really open this week, and I've seen two instances in the news from our government that have just really disgusted me. They've left an awful taste in my mouth, and they reflect a kind of New Zealand I don't want to live in, and I don't think anyone should want to live in. And on that note, I'm going to now read what I wrote, and apologies for this messy intro, but it's the best. It's the best you're getting out of me after my other tries. On Tuesday, when the opposition party in New Zealand was questioned about their newly appointed top 12 MPs being all white, party member Judith Collins answered, "Oh, is there something wrong with me being white?" I'm going to link the video below in the comment section, so please do have a look at that. On Wednesday, so yesterday, when Labour MP Tamari Coffey was asking a question to another person, mind, about the lack of a treaty partnership in a document being reviewed, Judith Collins exclaimed, and you have to hear the voice that she exclaims this in. I know politicians do this, but I'll link to this video as well, and please do listen. She exclaimed, "Oh, Jesus Christ, stupid questions." When Coffey's fellow Labour MP reflected out loud how that was a white girl comment, likely referencing Collins' own statement the day before, she piped up, No, it's actually someone who's utterly sick of being demonised for my ethnicity, thank you very much." When Coffey tries to move back to the discussion at hand, apologising for the interruption to the speaker he was initially addressing, Collins can be heard in the background saying, "Don't apologise for me, I can apologise for myself and I have no intention of." Like I said, I'll link to that video below. A member of New Zealand's right-wing ACT party has suggested the white girl comment was racist towards Judith Collins. No. Let's start with Tuesday's incident. In an increasingly multicultural country and one whose government is founded on the union and cooperation between two culturally diverse groups of people, the question of a major political party being all white on the day of this announcement cannot be considered invalid. In answering the question as she did, Collins centred an important discussion entirely on herself, victimising herself and indeed all white New Zealanders with the language she chose to use. Furthermore, she made a mockery of the question with the sarcastic and uncaring tone she adopted. As well as utterly undervaluing New Zealanders of colour in doing so, she also validated any white New Zealander in their harmful views that we shouldn't be held accountable for our whiteness. "It's not my fault I'm white" is something too often heard. No, it's not anyone's fault that the ethnicity they are. But the truth that being white in this society means we reap benefits others are deprived of is undeniable. One such benefit in 2020, seeing oneself reflected in a major party which helped shape this country. Regarding her comments yesterday on Wednesday, suggesting that a question around treaty partnerships is stupid demonstrates her absolute lack of care on this important subject, and again, in using the language she did to victimise herself, saying she's being demonised for her ethnicity, she feeds into an incredibly unhelpful and frankly dangerous narrative around the race and ethnicity in New Zealand. Regarding an opinion that Judith Collins is being called a white girl by a fellow white MP is racist towards Collins is wrong on so many levels. This week alone, we have seen two vile examples of racism in the United States make global headlines. Christian Cooper's life was threatened when a hysterical and quite simply in the wrong white woman was filmed screaming at him she was going to call the police, saying, "I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life." She then did this through tears, though her call did not result in the end of Christian Cooper's life, thank God, but it could have. It does almost every day in the States. It was on Tuesday when it was on Tuesday when Minneapolis man George Floyd was murdered by white policemen in broad daylight on camera. I haven't seen the video. I don't think we should be watching the video. I don't think we should need to be watching the video. What Amy Cooper did was despicable. She knew what she was doing. She knows the law stands on the side of the white in America, and she was using that power and that knowledge in the most deplorable way. White women actively framing themselves as victims in the face of people of color is dangerous. It's deadly. George Floyd's name is the latest on a list of hundreds we know about and thousands we don't. Read about Ahmaud Arbery, read about Breonna Taylor, read about Tatiana Jefferson, Sandra Bland, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Alton Sterling, Jamar Clark, Michael Brown, Freddie Gray, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner. The list goes on. I'm just going to stop there, but please do some research. It breaks my heart. It makes me feel defeated. It makes me feel hopeless. It makes me unspeakably angry. It makes me cry. It makes me crazy. I'm not even on the other side of the divide. I can't imagine what it feels like to be African American, but I don't have to. I just have to give a shit. America is not my country. New Zealand is. Institutional racism here doesn't play out in such a violent way, but don't let it fool you into thinking that it's not playing out here at all. Acknowledging racism within our own society does not equate to labeling yourself a racist. It equates acknowledging a very real problem which exists because of the history that has led us to this point. New Zealand is a country founded on the oppression of Native people. That's not on us, but how we move forward from here is. Saying I'm not racist is not enough. To quote one of the many powerful educators I've learnt from online, who I will also link to below, being anti-racist is an ongoing decision to uproot the ways white supremacy resides within the systems we navigate every day. Guess what? That means the leaders who shape our country. Giving the historically oppressed a seat at the table is vital. Intentionally omitting them is a means of silencing them, literally not giving them a voice with which to speak. Silencing them is hurting them. It is racist behaviour built upon 2 centuries of racist history, reframed with language like demonized for being white. Having all and only white people at the table stands in direct opposition to moving our country forward in a positive way. Shamelessly flipping this narrative to reframe white people as the victims rather than the perpetrators of racism is disgraceful. I hope Judith Collins feels ashamed of herself, but I know she doesn't. We need to create an environment where everyone who suggests anything even resembling what she did does feel shame, not the righteous indignation and pathetic "it's not my fault" sentiment she demonstrated this week. Nothing is going to change if we don't speak up. All New Zealanders, but most especially white New Zealanders, need to use our voices, especially when we live in a society that still actively denies a voice to some. And you can argue that point, that National is the major opposition party, and they haven't put a single person who's not white on their front 12, and I can't believe that. It's 2020, New Zealand's better than this. Where did I get up to? Sorry. Not giving an ethnic group a seat at the table is racist. When that ethnic group is the native people of New Zealand, who are central to the country's history and culture, it's even worse. When you leave out every single other ethnic group and allow space only for those the same as you, it's about as bad as it gets. Not only is Judith Collins and the National Party undervaluing any person of colour in this country, she's undermining white New Zealanders who don't think like her, and I can only hope that's most of us, a hope which is currently fed by the Labour leadership. We all saw Jacinda Ardern's response to the mosque shootings. I can't imagine how that would have played out had the leadership been different. Refusing to acknowledge valid concern posed as a thoughtful question is racist. Turning the conversation and reframing yourself from perpetrator to victim is not only racist but dangerous. It feeds the kind of sentiment which shapes countries, which has shaped America into a place where people of colour are legally and violently murdered on the streets in broad daylight on camera. It's the woman at the park screaming hysterically to a calm and justified man, calling the police and crying about an African American threatening her life. She knew what she was doing with that move. Judith Collins knows what she's doing with hers. She just doesn't care. I do. I'm asking if you do. If the answer is yes, call out racist language when you hear it, seek out and support oppressed voices when they're absent from conversations being had, the news we watch, the books we read, the filmmakers, the commentators, the lawmakers, the educators, the government. Engage people in conversations when they're saying things that aren't right, even when it's difficult, even when it's family, even when it takes time and energy. What more could be worth our time and energy than contributing to a better version of New Zealand. I don't want people to think I'm saying New Zealand is America. People don't get killed here the way they do in America all the time. But our society is built on a system for white people. In 2020, we need to do better, and we just need to stop putting up with this bullshit. I see things all the time on the news, in conversations around me, just small things, and we can't let those go by anymore. Anyway, I've gone off the page. That's where I finished. I don't know what to do. It's really disheartening living in a world where this shit happens, and New Zealand's so much better than so many countries, but it's not perfect, and I think that I can still love New Zealand and acknowledge that it's not perfect. I want it to become its best self. I think current leadership's taking huge strides in that direction. I think the opposition's, I don't know what they're thinking. I can't even get into their headspace, but we need to be having these conversations. This is weird. I never do videos. It feels really weird to do this, but I think we need to be having these conversations publicly. So I'm putting something out there in the hope that someone will see it. And even if they disagree with me, engage me in conversation. I want to talk about this. And I think we need to be having these conversations privately, publicly. This isn't good enough anymore. And I just don't want to read news stories like this anymore. I'm sure no one does. So let's just do better.